Today we conclude our season of teaching. And in this story, Jesus teaches an expert something he didn't know and invites him to a new learning, to something entirely different. But yet, that entirely different thing grounded what the expert already done. As I write and record this sermon, I'm acutely aware of the weariness that plagues so many people, including me at times. We're much closer to the year marker of dealing with this pandemic than we were ever willing to admit early on. We thought we'd make some adjustments for a couple of weeks, turn for worship, be fine. We even tried that. Didn't work out. Not the worship didn't, the worship worked out. In our society, it didn't work out to be fine. And we've had to close down again for longer with tighter restrictions. And the weariness is setting in. Hard to see the benefit in all that's been going on. It is that same sense of weariness that I'm confident that Peter experienced at the end of that night of fishing. After a long, unproductive night, getting nowhere, of catching no fish, Jesus tells him to try again, and it'll be fine. Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." I hope when you read then the scriptures, that you read it with a sense of weariness in your voice. Don't read it with hope. Jesus hadn't done anything yet for Peter to place hope in. This was their first meeting that we know of in the scriptures. This was the beginning of Jesus. For Peter, he moved from weariness to fear. Simon Peter saw how many fish they had caught. He fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." The crowd, they moved from sensing Peter's weariness to a sense of amazement. For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And it isn't fear or amazement where this story ends. Then Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Do not be afraid, for from now on you will be catching people." It is in this moment that Jesus calls Peter from his weariness, from his fear, something new. So what is that new thing? For Peter, it was to fish for people. And certainly as I've spent time preaching to an empty church and recording worship in an empty church, there is a sense of weariness at times that comes on. When I thought I was going to be ordained, when I saw ordination, I figured I would be leading people to worship. I'd be preaching to people who would be here, preaching and presiding to camera lacks the mystery and excitement and amazement of gathering God's people together. Please, though, don't be worried about my sense of weariness. I think it's a natural part of what we've all been living through. I also think that in that weariness, in that moment of recognizing how that weariness is, that we can also sense that God is calling us to something new, something based on what we already know, something that is familiar. The question for us, though, is what is that new thing? This time of weariness will pass. It will. It may be taking longer than we would like, but we know progress is being made. And I hope, even more importantly than that, we are being called. I hope we know that we are being called to something new. Because this weariness is not for nothing. This weariness is to help us understand God's word will come into the world again in a different way. We are being called to help go on that way. Share God's word in the world. And for that, give thanks.